Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Mike Okwache. Now, do you know that the word happy means the same thing as gay? Well, in a sexual context, gay is a word that has recently stirred up international outcry and inspired national debate in Africa. And as it stands, it is believed that the gay community in most parts of Africa will need some sort of Mandela, someone who will rescue them from the laws that criminalize all forms of gay relationships. Now, Nigeria recently passed a same-sex marriage law which bans all forms of gay advocacy or culture, with offenders facing up to 14 years jail term. Some say that's fair enough compared to Uganda, where gay sex is punishable by life imprisonment. What are your thoughts on gay rights in Africa? Share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC Africa Today, or send an email to africatoday@tvcnews.tv and you will be heard. We'll take this report in Africa Today. We'll be right back. Welcome on board.
Being gay in Cameroon is tough. Homosexuals face physical abuse, family rejection, and difficulty in finding a job, renting a home, or even receiving medical treatment. Also, having homosexual relations is punishable by 5 years in jail, and hate attacks are common. Simplice is taking a huge risk just by appearing on camera to speak about his sexual tendencies.
Why should we hide our homosexuality, especially since larger countries have already legalized it? I don't understand why Cameroonians are always behind the curve.
In South Africa, attacks on lesbians have been described as corrective rape, while Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe called gay people worse than pigs or dogs. But certain NGOs say sexual minorities face some of the toughest treatments in Cameroon.
People are arrested, they're put in prison, often they're beaten, tortured, and often they confess under duress to having engaged in same-sex conduct in the past. And then they're prosecuted. And these trials are sham.
Alice Nkom is one of the few lawyers willing to go to their defense.
When we said in our constitution that Cameroon protects the rights of minorities, we didn't say except sexual minorities. They are minorities and we have to protect them. I was really happy that the Cameroonian government received a lot of help and financing from the World Bank to allow gay people to receive medical care.
However, there is some hope for homosexuals, as for the first time in 2012, Mr. Gay World took place in South Africa, the only country where homosexuals can marry and adopt children. It is yet to be seen if other countries will eventually relax their tough stance concerning this minority group.
Glad to have you join us, certainly. In most parts of Africa, the issue of gay rights is a sensitive topic, of which South Africa is not an exception. In 2006, the country became the first in Africa and the fifth in the world to legalize same-sex marriage. Now, to discuss gay culture in Africa today, we have Anne Winsell, a media consultant from South Africa. It's good to have you join us today.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to Africa Today.
Thank you.
Right, and later on the show, we'll be linking up on phone with Ifani, a gay activist, and that'll be later on the program. Now, you've lived in South Africa, you've lived in Nigeria, you've been to Kenya, you've been to most major countries of Africa. But when you heard that Nigeria was passing the law against gay rights and so on, what came to your mind?
In all honesty, it wasn't that big a surprise. There is a lot of homophobia in Nigeria, and however, having said that, 38 countries in Africa have criminalized gay relationships and gay sexual acts. I'm a bit concerned when I think that in Nigeria there's so much that can be done, you know, that this law is not a good way of getting anything done when there are other much larger issues that can be dealt with.
Okay. Now, from the standpoint of the international community, why is the law against gay rights in Africa, why is it a big issue? Why is it a big phenomenon?
Because from that perspective, it's not about whether people are gay or not.
Okay.
It's about whether people's human rights are affected. You know, nobody will say to someone, you cannot practice your religion, because it's a personal and a private thing. And it's the same with sexual orientation. So you're infringing on your freedom of expression, first of all, because it's a part of who you are. And then you are infringing on my right of association and of privacy. So if I want that right for myself as a straight person, what is so wrong about a gay person having that right? And when it comes to human rights, we are all human. So all the rights apply to us all equally. And that's where that international response comes from, is it is about your rights as a human being.
Now, so many Africans believe that the issues of gay, same-sex marriage or relationship or friendship, as the case may be, is alien to the culture and history of Africa. And some see it as a Western thing and, and so on. But what's your opinion? Does it conflict the culture of Africa?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe that's because I'm a South African.
Yeah.
And South Africa, I'm sure, have some awareness of our history of apartheid. And under apartheid, we had white governments only, despite being a black majority. So when we voted a black government into power, one of the first things they did was get a new constitution. Okay. And our new constitution in 1996, under a black government, was the first constitution in the world to say the rights of gay people are the same as the rights of straight people.
Okay.
And that is a black government doing that. So I don't consider it about African culture. And that's why I say, look, maybe it's because I'm a South African. However, having said that, when you look, for example, in the Ukraine and Russia, they're not black, but they are having some of these same issues. Gay people are being persecuted. Gay people are being marginalized. So whose culture is it really?
Okay, it's not peculiar to Africa per se. No. All right, we'll come back to this. Now, joining us on phone is Ifeanyi, a gay activist. Ifeanyi, it's good to have you join us on Africa Today. Now, were you surprised to hear the anti-gay law passed in Nigeria?
Well, I am not surprised. I had known over time that this was going to happen. I just knew we were sitting on a time bomb that was going to explode.
All right, now, some analysts say the government should be more interested in fighting corruption with the right legislation than passing an anti-gay law. Now, do you share in that opinion?
I very well share in that opinion. There are lots of things that are happening in Nigeria that people need to focus on. I always talk with a friend who will always say to me, Nigerians have short memory. And I'm beginning to believe that. I'm beginning to believe that so much that there are issues that have been discussed over time, recently talking about our government officials with certificates, without no institution. And suddenly, here comes the same-sex legislation bill that the president signed. Within a twinkle of an eye, everybody forgot about that. And I keep saying to myself, if the government, the both houses in our history can come together unanimously to sign a bill just to criminalize people who love themselves, within a twinkle of an eye, and then the president signing the bill into law the same day he received the bill, shouldn't Nigerians be asking questions? That means our anti-corruption bill, where is it? We have lots of bills lying around in the House of Assembly, the Senate, even at the presidency. It's time for us to start asking questions and not dwelling on who sleeps with who.
All right, let me ask you.
Orientation is beyond sexual intercourse.
Okay. All right, Ifeanyi, let me ask you this. Would you advocate that the West should maybe, as a way of trying to ensure some African countries stay online and not pass a law against pass a law against gay relationship and all of that, would you advocate that they stop some foreign aid and assistance to African countries, or maybe particularly Nigeria?
The reality, we need to face a reality. For example, if I am putting my money where my mind is, and the money is not going to yield fruit anymore. Why would I want to continue putting my money in there? For example, funding for HIV and AIDS. We cannot achieve the fight against HIV and AIDS without this population that is being criminalized against. So anybody who's putting money into HIV and AIDS is just in a loss. You will keep spending the same money over and over again, and the prevalence will keep going high because you're not getting everything right. So I don't blame foreign governments if they say they want to take their aid back. You know, people need to put in their money where their heart is and where it will yield results.
All right. Now, Ifeanyi, why do you think this law is an abuse of fundamental human rights?
It is clearly stated in the law. It is clearly marked. Well, we are not asking for marriage, but for people to restrict us from access to healthcare services, access to justice, that is a clear violation of my fundamental rights. As a human being, it doesn't matter if I'm gay or not. It doesn't matter if I'm straight or bent. It doesn't matter if I'm black or white. But I should have equal access to healthcare services, which the Constitution guarantees me.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ifeanyi. And stay online. We'll come back to you again on this. Now, before we go into tweets, because we had a lot of responses from people across the world on this topic, let me ask you this. Would it have been better to use the strategy of persuading the people than just putting a blanket law against gay relationship?
Look, I always think it's good when you are going to do something that affects the whole population group to canvass opinion. I mean, we have a history of canvassing opinion in SA. I'm not sure that we always listen to those opinions, but the fact is it also gets a debate going. Right now, we're not aware that there's been any debate except possibly in government. And what your caller said earlier as well is the fact that, you know, the bill arrived the night or the afternoon and was signed within that same 24-hour period. Doesn't anybody ask any questions about that? I mean, that's also interesting. What is kind of the rationale behind it, number one? Because it also just seems, from a logistics perspective, it's going to give the police a lot of work. You know, don't they also have better things to do? You know, I mean, there are some problems with policing in Nigeria and with police resources. Don't we have something else that they could do that would better serve their purposes? So it just seems that also, if that bill went through so quickly, what opinion was canvassed? If it is supposed to be the will of the people, then show us that you asked the people what their will was.
Okay. All right. We're already getting some tweets from the questions we asked earlier on concerning your thoughts on gay rights in Africa. Here's some of the voices we have in here. Mirasa Amiram from the United Kingdom says, in Africa and in any part of the world, the right to live is as precious as the right to love. And then we have Phil Christou from Portugal says, I think that everyone should love you for who you are. I'm a proud lesbian, married with a beautiful girl. And people should not be restricted. Abi Juma from Kenya says, no one has any rights in another's love making, because no one's morality is law, and it takes no political deal to give people freedom. All right, and we have Lanky Observer. As for God creating Adam and Eve, that you still believe in that story literally is telling. Well, I can't really get the idea behind that, but however, Adiolu Adegunji said the so-called gay, are they not ashamed about it? It is not a normal life. There must be a way to stop it in Africa. And then we have Amabo Christian Purefoy says from London, said billions stolen, thousands dead, no electricity. Talking about the bill means an unaccountable government wins. And we have Africa development. We guess some people need to understand the context and stay within boundary. Africa may not be ripe if it will ever be. All right, we'll take a quick time out, and Africa Today will be right back. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Now, according to statistics, homosexual intimacy is a criminal offense in 78 countries of the world. And this includes 38 out of 54 African countries, with some calling it the most homophobic of continents on the planet. Now, let's take it this way. Do you think, from the reaction of people, Africans generally, do you think maybe Africa is not ripe for the issue of gay relationships and so on?
Well, I think it depends. I do think also that if you look at some of the social media polls, Nigerians themselves have been almost 50-50.
Okay.
You know, so again, it comes down almost to a situation of when you say it is what the people want, which people?
Okay.
How many of the people? How detailed has this research or homework or investigation been done into what the people want? Because the other thing about culture is culture changes.
All right.
Culture is not static. You know, if culture was static, we would not be here in the studio, you know, speaking to the audience, having this conversation. So sometimes issues of culture, even then, we must ask questions of who does it serve?
Okay.
You know, so those, I think, are some of the things that need to come into the conversation with the people. Not just to ask a single question, but to give also context and background to say, okay, now let's have a discussion, because a lot of questions, they appear as yes, no answers, but they are not. They actually need to be looked at in terms of who we are, how we live our lives, where we're going forward. Because a lot of people, when they turn around and they realize, oh wait, but my cousin is gay, but there's nothing wrong with my cousin. My cousin is a good Christian, my cousin does tithing, does charity work, helps out their neighbors, has never behaved in any improper or immoral or corrupt way. And then you've got to say to yourself, so what is the issue there? But the thing is also to look at it in the context of how does it affect me? Because how does it affect me if, for example, you are gay? It doesn't. It doesn't affect me at all.
Are there some serious direct economic implications to the countries that are passing the law against gay, like especially Nigeria?
Okay, very honestly, I'm not an economist, okay? And also this law has just been passed in Nigeria. However, it would seem to me logically, economically, what you're doing is you're going to put manpower and hours, i.e. money, into police. Okay. You know, now researching, we're investigating who is gay and who is not gay. What is going to happen to your prisons?
Okay.
Are you not going to overload your prison system? You know, so just from the aspect of the first points of contact, which is they have to be arrested and then they have to be jailed, because that's the law now. So just from those 2 points, obviously you can extrapolate it from there because it grows further. So just at that point, besides the fact that you stretch your resources, you have to put more money into those resources. So now you have to add more manpower, you have to add bigger facilities, you have to get more caterers. There are all kinds of things where you go from that kind of first basic aspect. And on the point of economy though, when you do look at the countries that have passed these laws, most of them are really poor already. Do they really need to strain the economy even further? You know, I mean, when you look at the fact that 11 people were rounded up in Nigeria.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, what could we have done with those man hours that were used to round up those people?
Okay. All right, let's get to Ifeanyi. Now, Ifeanyi, if you can hear me, I was asking you earlier on, now that the law has been passed, how vulnerable are those who are gay?
They are actually vulnerable, very, very vulnerable, because as it stands right now, no one is safe. Security is an issue for gay people who live particularly in the suburbs, where mob and jungle justice is the order of the day. Is that what we wish for in Nigerian society? Is that what we want to see? Do we want to promote violence? Do we want to promote discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity or expression? I don't think that is I don't think that should be our focus. I'm a patriotic Nigerian, and I heard you talking about the economic implication. It has huge economic implication. If we do not know, we have foreigners who are gay, who have not disturbed the peace and security of this nation, who contributes to our economy. I'm an employer of labor. I pay tax. We have several other gay people who pay tax. Should you tell us to keep our money when the organization that provides services where even straight people work to provide services for gay people, are you going to send them home? Those people also have families who depend on them. Have we thought about this ripple effect?
Okay. Now, I asked this question in the studio. Let me ask you too. Now, some arguments, some of the arguments from the leaders say that the issues of gay conflict, religious beliefs, and African culture. What's your opinion on that?
When people talk about culture and they say they want to preserve our culture and heritage, I have a few questions. Is Christianity our culture? It's true. It's wearing shirt and tie our culture.
Okay.
We should try and preserve those as well. Using human beings for sacrifice is part of our culture. Why aren't we preserving it?
Okay.
We need to get things straight. Before the British colony brought the anti-gay law to Nigeria, that means the act has existed. Gay people have long existed in our society. They have existed in our culture. How did we deal with it?
Okay. Thank you very much, Ifeanyi, for talking to us on Africa Today. Thank you. All right, let me as we almost round off the program now, how do you think African leaders should have gone with this issue of gay rights on the continent?
Well, I think first of all, it needs to be made open to public debate.
Okay.
You know, it definitely needs to be made open to public debate, because we also can't pretend that gay people don't exist, because they definitely do. I think in a lot of African countries, even where it's not criminalized, they kind of go underground in a sense, because even in South Africa, we do still have incidents of violence against gays. However, in South Africa, that is the criminal act.
Okay.
Being gay is not the criminal act.
Okay.
But the violence towards that person, because the violence towards anyone is a criminal act. And in fact, around a year or two ago, 4 men were sentenced to 18 years in jail for attacking and killing an openly lesbian woman. So the thing is that we do have that elements, but everywhere you will have that elements. Generically though, most South Africans don't have a problem with it, and if they do, it's like, you know, it's not my preference. It's not for me, it's not what I want, but that's what you do, and that's your personal preference. So the thing is to open it up to discussion and also to educate people, because I think some people think that just by coming into contact with someone who is gay, they will automatically be gay. You know, like when AIDS first was known.
HIV.
Exactly, but a lot of misconceptions and lots of ideas just going around. I don't know if you can remember, one of the first kind of theories, urban legends, was that it was airborne. Yeah, and then it was supposed to be manufactured in a lab somewhere from the West. You know, don't worry, we're Africans in South Africa. We get these rumors as well. So I think there's also that thing about educating people to say, look, do you understand what this is? Do you understand what this means? So I think that's a whole, because part of saying to people, let's talk about it, is they must know what they're talking about. Okay. If you don't know what you're talking about, you can't fully take part in the conversation.
And Wenzel, thank you for joining us today on Africa Today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. All right. Now, we still have responses from your tweets. And Experience Nigeria in Nigeria says, how can you choose to be gay and adopt a child no more parents have conceived? Being gay is a lie from the pit of hell. All right, we have this one. Callistus Juma from New York says, I support the expansion of human liberties and reject all extremist efforts to globalize hate. And Abel Abate de Mise from Ethiopia says individuals should have the right to choose and exercise their sexual orientation. That is basic right. And Johan Baez from South Africa says gay rights equals human rights. I support human liberty, and Africa's anti-gay laws are taking us back to the dark ages. We have Tinu Odonuga from Nigeria says individuals should have the right to choose and exercise their sexual orientation. And that is basic right, and God decides. All right, Mira from England says the oppression of a group of people is the oppression of all people. The only justice is inclusion, not exclusion. And we have Ayo Deleting. I believe that gay rights in Africa should be abolished because it conflicts with our culture. Those are voices and opinion from people out there. Now, anti-gay laws have not only got us talking on Africa Today, it has also got you talking as well. Now, some people like Archbishop Desmond Tutu would refuse to be homophobic. Others on the side of Robert Mugabe believe gays and lesbians have no place in the African society. Now, with growing number of anti-gay laws on the continent, many say it will take a long, long time to change the perception of same-sex relationships in Africa, if it will ever change. That's our show on Africa Today. Keep your comments coming on Twitter at TVC Africa Today, or send an email to africatoday@tvcnews.tv. And until we come your way again, I am Mike Okwoche. And remember, this is Africa. Bye for now.